Before we start today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive all new. Our series starts in a city called Lug Town, and we see a large group of people watching the execution of a man named Gol D. Roger, who is nicknamed the King of the Pirates, and of course he was arrested after many years of exile, and we know that the one who was able to arrest him is the general of the naval forces named Garb. And Garb says to Roger that he was warned a lot and that the matter could have ended in a better way than that, but Roger laughs and tells him that he wants someone to let go of his hand to get rid of this exaggeration. But Garb ignores him and remains prepared to finish the execution. But a loud voice comes out of the people who are standing, and a random person asks Roger about the place of his treasure that he has been collecting for years. So Roger laughs like crazy and says that his treasure is in a place that no one can reach except those who deserve it, because he will die himself, and encourages all the people to go out to the sea to look for his treasure. The treasure is the One Piece, so he calls all the people by the name of Roger. So Garb orders the execution of Roger because he will open the gates of the pirates that they will not be able to close. And Roger dies and laughs like crazy because he was able to do what he wanted. And since then, the great pirate era has begun. All of them have only one goal, and that is to reach the treasure of the One Piece and get the title of the King of the Pirates. And after 22 years of events, we see a young man standing on a very small boat and telling this story to someone sitting in front of him, and he introduces himself that he wants to be the king of the pirates. And we know that the person sitting in front of him is not a human, but a bird that is resting on his boat. But the young man's boat is sinking and he can't swim, so he opens a barrel next to him and enters it and closes himself. And the water takes this barrel to two ships that are hitting each other, and we know that this big pink ship is called Alfida, and it is required to catch it alive or dead, and it has a reward of 5 million gold coins. And it is wild and can take over the ship in front of it. And when it gets the reward of this war, it takes the barrel that the young man who was with us a while ago and puts it in the cage. And we know that Alfida is looking for someone named Zoro, and he is a pirate hunter, and Alfida wants to get rid of him because she heard that he is very skillful, and maybe this is what will be her end. But when no one from the hostages helps her with any information, she goes to their heads with her spear and kills them, and calls a young man named Kabi to clean the ship of blood. And at night, Kabi is in the cage cleaning the Alfida ship. But suddenly the young man comes out of the barrel and hides the rest of Kabi so that he does not show up. And we know that this young man is called Monkey D. Luffy. And he calls him Luffy, and he tells Kabi that he is in the worst place possible because he is in the ship of Alfida. But Luffy does not care about his words, and he tells him that he is hungry and wants to eat anything. So he asks Kabi what brought the ship, and he tells him that he is a pirate. And Kabi replies that he is not a final pirate because pirates are poor, and he is neither this nor that. And he tells him that he is a rare type of pirate. And he remembers when he was a child, all the people in the village loved him. But he was considered a person who was like his father and his role model. And he is Shanks, a red-haired pirate and a cap of ash. And Luffy was hoping to be one of his team, but Shanks tells him that the life of the sea is dead, and he is still young. So he runs to Luffy and holds a knife and cuts his face to prove to Shanks that he can withstand anything. So Shanks sits with Luffy to sew the wound on his face, and he tells him that he could have hurt his eye. So he tells Luffy that he meant to hurt his eye, but he could not do it correctly and the knife fell a little. But Shanks tells Luffy that he is sorry that he was forced to do this, but he is still young. So he promises Luffy that when he grows up, he will see his picture as the most famous pirate, and he will ask him for a reward number that has not been written on a pirate at all. And because Kobe is good, he tries to escape Luffy, but Luffy is stupid, and he makes a sound and wakes up all the sleeping pirates, and she sees the video and tells Kobe that he is a traitor. But Luffy introduces her to him and tells her that Kobe did not serve her to talk to her like that. And he introduces her to her that Kobe tells her that she is a monster and a whore, and her voice is loud and annoying, so she gets angry at Alvida, who is not the first and last woman, and she tries to kill Kobe. But Luffy saves him and also hits one of Alvida's team. But one of Alvida's team hits Luffy with a gun. But when the bullet hits Luffy, it returns to the one who hit her, and we know that Luffy has a power that makes him a bandage. And he burns Luffy on the ship and also hits Alvida with his favorite shot, which he calls Jumi Jumi no, and he flies her from the ship. And we leave Luffy now and go to a man with green hair who is sitting and lighting a candle. And he comes from behind a person and tells him that he was looking for him, and he called him Zoro. And we know that this is Zoro the pirate hunter. And the person who is coming to him wants to join the team he is in because Zoro is famous for being a good swordsman. But Zoro tells him that he has his own business. But this second person tells him that he will be an important member of his team. But Zoro tells him that he will not accept being less than number 1 in the team. But this person tells him that he is number 7, and he is jealous of him. So Zoro responds to him and tells him that they were supposed to send someone stronger than this. But this is annoying number 7, and he attacks Zoro. But of course Zoro is much stronger, and with a move from him, he divides number 7 into 2 halves. And we know that Kobe and Luffy fled in a small ship away from the first ship. And Kobe asks Luffy about the secret of his strength, and he tells him that when he was young, he was looking for things in Shanks, and he saw a box with a strange fruit, so he ate it and found it very sweet. And after a while, Shanks was standing in a tent, and he entered the leader of the pirates and asked for drinks. But Shanks apologized to him because he and his team finished all the drinks, and gave the pirate half a glass as a reward. But the pirate breaks the glass and humiliates Shanks, so he takes Shanks a broom and cleans the floor, and makes the pirate walk without fighting. But Luffy sees what happened and is angry with Shanks for insulting his generosity. But Shanks told him that not everything can be solved by violence. But Luffy was walking, and he was sad. But Shanks held Luffy's hand, but the surprise happened, and it was that Luffy's hand stretched and extended while walking. And Shanks knew that Luffy ate the devil's fruit. And so we would have known the secret of Luffy. And so Luffy told Kobe about his dream in life, and he told him that he wanted to be a soldier with freedom. But this is difficult for him, so he hit Luffy and told him that as long as this is his dream, he must be encouraged and achieve it. So they both go to a city called the Ships. And this is the place where the soldiers' camps are. And Kobe can be a soldier with freedom. And Luffy stands in front of a large wall with announcements for pirates who are in need of justice and rewards. And Luffy hopes that his picture will be on this wall, and they both enter to eat anything, so we will be next to them. And we see a girl with orange hair in the neighborhood, and she goes to a marine soldier and tells him that her name is Nami, and she asks him to invite her to a drink. And by chance, Zoro enters this neighborhood, and he has a bag with the body of the person who separated him. But a young girl comes to him and laughs at him, and she has a plate of meatballs. But this girl hits a person and drops the food from it, and the evil person presses on the food. But Zoro is slow and eats from this food, and tells the girl that its taste is very sweet, and he takes a piece of food and asks the evil person to eat it. But this person laughs and tells him that he certainly does not know who he is, and tells him that his name is Hilambo, and he is the son of the Marine Captain Morgan, the owner of the Hand of the Night. And he raises his sword to Zoro and tells him that he will kill him. But Zoro defends himself and hits Hilambo and all the soldiers who attack him. And Luffy is very happy with this offer. But we see the girl named Nami pulls the girl who wanted to invite her to a drink, and he loses consciousness without anyone seeing her. And after the fight ends, he goes to visit Hilambo, and tells him that he is worried that his father is an important person, and will give him the money he wants. So he goes to Morgan to give the money to Zoro, and we see Morgan with his hand cut off. And he tells Zoro that he will not give him money, but he will punish him for what he did to his son. And he tells Zoro that his son is not a man, and when Hilambo tries to interfere in the conversation, he hits his father and flies him. And he tells Morgan to Zoro that he likes him and wants him to stay with him in his army. But Zoro tells him that he does not have a single dress and a servant, so he tries to force Morgan to serve the naval fleet. And he tells him that he will be tied for 7 days in the sun until he decides. And if he survives, he will leave him to go. And all night Luffy cannot think of anything but Zoro, and he wants to join his team. And the next day we see Zoro tied, and Hilambo goes to him and he has a sword from Zoro's sword, and they fight with him. And he tells Zoro that when he breaks free, he will be the first to die at his hands. And he tells him that his son will not let him go. And we see Nami wearing the soldier's clothes, and she enters with a squad into the naval fleet. And Luffy comes out of the tunnel next to Zoro, and he is tired because he wants to enter the castle, but he finds Zoro tied. And he tells him that he does not like him and wants him to join his team. And he tells Zoro that he is a pirate hunter, and all he wants is to be the greatest fighter in the world. And he answers him and tells him that the show is still available at any time, and he wishes him good luck. And he goes to Zoro and tells him that he deserves more freedom than this torture. And he leaves him and goes, and we go to Nami, who can enter the treasure chest and is the One Piece treasure map. But she finds the soldier who stole his clothes from him and knows that she is a pirate, so he attacks her. But she hits him, and at this time Luffy enters the treasure chest and tells Nami that she will be caught for the theft, but he tells her that she is also a pirate. And he tells her that he only wants the One Piece map, so she tells him that she also wants it, and they walk around it together. But suddenly they find Morgan in their face, and she gathers Nami the subject and tells him that she is a soldier with them in the fleet. and she caught the criminal Luffy. And indeed, he can pass him for Morgan. And Nami can also steal his office keys from him, and he goes to look for the map. And he goes to visit the Helumbo and finds him naked, and he plays with his sword. So he takes Zoro's sword from him, and we go back to Luffy, and he keeps looking for the map with Nami. And he accidentally steps on something that makes him open a secret place for the map in it. But at this time, Morgan discovers that the two of them are pirates, and he goes back to the office and finds them locked up. So he makes Luffy and Nami pull him from his back, and he holds the treasure with his hands, and he is very strong, and he removes the treasure from its place and removes it from the castle. And there are soldiers waiting for them to kill them. But Luffy and Nami resist. But Zoro is passing by them and sees them, so he has to return the gem to Luffy and save him, and he saves a large part of the soldiers. But Morgan descends to them and tells them that this is the real time of conflict. And Nami kills the soldiers, and Luffy and Zoro take over Morgan. And there is a very good coordination between them in the fight. And we know that Zoro is fighting with 2 ships in his hand and the 3rd in his mouth. And he can help Luffy to kill Morgan. And they take the treasure and go to the 3rd closest ship to move. But he comes to them with a gun to catch them. But Kobe comes to beat him and loses consciousness. And he says goodbye to Kobe and tells him that he will be a soldier in the fleet. And the next time he will meet her, he will be enemies. And he tells Luffy that they are now friends. And Luffy gets on the ship and leaves. And we see Garbo and we know that he grew up. But he remains as strong, and he gets a call and finds out about the map theft. And he decides that he must take charge of this case himself. And Nami tries to open the safe. And this is because she is a very clever thief, and Luffy is sticking to her. But Nami hits the hat she wore, and she was afraid of him. So he tells her that she will accept anything that happens. But her hat will get her something, because she is a dear person to him. And she opens the safe and finds a map of the big line. And this is the place of the treasure. And Nami enters to explain to Luffy and Zoro about all the details of the map. And it is clear that she has experience in the field, but they hear a sound of a hit. And there is a pirate ship attacking them without drugs. But Luffy can swallow the map before he loses consciousness. And when he goes up, he finds Zoro and Nami next to him, and everything stolen from them except his hat. So he says that this is the most important thing, and Nami says that they lost the map, but Luffy tells her that it is in a safe place, and he shivers. But suddenly the box that remains opens, and they find themselves in a circus, and the one who kidnapped them is a pirate named Baggy, and he is asked for justice. But Luffy follows his steps, because he is literally a pervert. So Baggy gets angry and tells him that everything is but my steps, and everything they want is the treasure map, and they stole it. But Nami wants to run away, and she says that she will give Baggy a magic show, and he is a rubber boy, and she throws Luffy's hat in the air, and he reaches out and gets it, and Baggy knows that he ate the devil's fruit, and Nami tries to run, but she finds the city in which they are destroyed, and this is because Baggy took over it and captured its people, and made them the audience of his crazy show. And there are special shows for Luffy, so he tells his men to come and capture him, and he ties Luffy's arms and keeps tightening them. But Luffy is very happy with this conversation. But Baggy looks like Luffy's hat, and he takes it from him and tells him that this is from a person he hates very much. So he tells Luffy that it is from his role, Shanks, and he tells Baggy that this is his enemy, because Shanks did not agree to be from his men, and he betrayed their friendship. Or he was the one who thought they were friends. But the show is not exciting at all. And Baggy goes to the small family of the audience, and he wants to do what he does with Luffy. But of course, Luffy gets angry and can break himself, and he hits Baggy with the drum. No, but suddenly Baggy's brain flies to the audience, but it returns to his body again. And we know that Baggy also ate the devil's fruit, but his strength is cutting, and he is able to cut his body and put it together again. And suddenly he finds Luffy Baggy's hand on his shoulder, and she hits a pump with a drug and loses consciousness. And at this time, there is someone who is being bullied and wants to kill him. And Nami tries to free herself from the cage she is in. And Nami succeeds in freeing herself and goes to hit the person who is being bullied. And they take their things to go to Luffy. But we go back to Luffy's past a little, and we see the pirate who bullied Shanks inside the house again. But Luffy kicks him out of it to insult Shanks. But this pirate lifts Luffy from his clothes in the air and tells him that he will kill him. But Shanks enters them and tells the pirate that he is ready to insult himself, and because someone is hurting his friends, and within seconds, the Shanks team is the worst pirate team. But Shanks notices that Luffy is not there, and the bad pirate kidnaps Luffy on a boat and enters the sea, but a huge mythical monster appears on them and turns them into water. And we go back to Luffy in the present time, and we find him in a glass box, and it is filled with water. And we know that this is seawater, and he tells Baggy that he will enjoy it while he sees him drowning. And we know that seawater is the weak point of anyone who ate the bad fruit, because he can't swim and drown. And this is the same thing that happened when he was turned into water because of the monster a long time ago. And the one who was able to save him was Shanks. But this mythical monster attacks Shanks, but Shanks uses a blind ability that makes the monster flee. And he is afraid. But Luffy looks at Shanks' arm and knows that Shanks lost his arm because of him. But Shanks tells him that this is just an arm. The important thing is that he is fine, and Luffy is about to suffocate from the water. But he shivers on something behind Baggy's back. And we see Zoro and Nami standing and throwing a metal stick at Luffy and freeing him from the box he was in. But he takes everything out of his stomach because of the water he swallowed. And now Baggy takes what he wants from Luffy from the beginning, which is the map of the treasure. But the most important thing for Luffy is his hat. And Zoro and Nami enter in a fight with Baggy, who cuts himself 50 pieces and becomes something impossible. But Luffy comes up with an idea and explains it to Zoro and Nami, which is that they hold a part of Baggy and lock him in a box alone. And indeed, this plan is beneficial to Baggy. And before they leave this place, Luffy goes to free the prisoners who were tied. And before they leave the city, he says goodbye to the people of the city, Luffy and his hat. And in the ship, Zoro tells Luffy that it is clear that their way will be difficult and deadly. So he tells Luffy that Shanks said that whoever finds an easy way must make sure that he is on the wrong path. So Zoro knows that Luffy is the most excited and optimistic person in the world. And we know that Shanks' last sea trip was the journey of the prisoners on the One Piece treasure. And he goes with Luffy himself and says goodbye to him so that he knows that the journey will be deadly. And he gives Luffy his hat, and he leaves. And this is the last thing left of Shanks to Luffy. And he goes to the castle of the Sea Fleet, and he ties Morgan in front of all the soldiers, and he calls to be defeated by our pirates, and the map was stolen from him. And he forms an army of young men to help him in the arrest of the pirate who stole the map, which he calls the Pirate Hat. And we know that Kobe and Halumbo are still in this army, and he prepares Luffy a banner to be raised on the ship's deck, and it is the image of the pirate's skull, but wearing a pirate hat like Luffy because he is the leader. But Nami refuses and says that she will never be in a band raising this banner, and Kobe rides with the ship's army of Garb and Halumbo, and his mission is to tie the knot of the legacy. But he ties it wrong, and he goes to Kobe to tie it himself. But Halumbo gets angry at him and tells him that he likes to embarrass him, but Garb asks who confirmed the knot. And he tells him that it was Kobe who made it, and he thinks that Garb is angry, but he praises Kobe and tells him to come with him to the office, and he leaves the missions to beginners like Halumbo, and he goes to Luffy with his closest city team to look for a ship for them, and we go to Baggy after he is freed from the chains, and a man enters him, a mix between a man and a fish, and he tells Gabby that Arlong wants him, but Gabby is fooled by a person named Arlong, but the fish behind him beats him and loses consciousness. And we go back to the team of Luffy, and we know that Nami wants to steal a ship, but Luffy objects and tells her that the ship will be their home, and they must take it in a legal way. And Luffy finds a ship in its bow with a statue of a large goat, and he falls into its trap, and he finds a person who cleans it named Usopp, and he tells Luffy that he wants to buy this ship, but Usopp tells him that he is not its owner, but he can take them to its owner, who is his closest friend. And indeed Usopp takes them to the house of the girl who is his friend, whose name is Kaya. And it is not just a house, but it is a big palace, and the people who work there are a chef and a maid, and both hate Usopp. But Kaya goes out with her maid, whose name is Klahader, and we know that Kaya is sick with a chronic disease. So Usopp tells her that he came with his team, and he is their leader. So Luffy, who is with him, completely shuts up and welcomes Kaya with them and invites them to dinner as well, and gives them new clothes. But Klahadur does not agree because he does not like Usopp. And today is the birthday of Kaya the 20th, who will inherit her inheritance. But Kaya tells him that it is not possible, and she is determined to attend with her. And we know that Klahadur has been taking care of Kaya since her parents died 15 years ago, and always with her in everything. But we see the maid cooking something blue, and when the chef comes to taste it, she follows the girl with him, and tells him that he wants to kill himself or something. And we know that this food has poison. And we go to Kobe, and we know that the neighbor is interested in him, and he decided to teach him all the necessary skills to be a skilled soldier. And we go back to Kaya's party, and we see a man with a goat's brain, and we know that this is Mary, who is responsible for her father's work for the past period, and who is supposed to inherit this job for her today. And the most important part comes to Luffy, which is food, and they go in and have dinner together, and we go to the neighbor, and he is able to reach the place of the Cap's night, and he makes Kobe the leader of the search group. And we know that Klahadur wants Mary to teach him his work and the port, and everything is up to him, as long as he's the one who cares about Kaya. But when Mary refuses, Klahadur moves quickly in the place, and he stands in front of Mary, and he suffers from a bruise that comes out of his hand. And we go to Baggy, who when he loses consciousness, finds himself with Arnold. And we know that Arnold is the leader of the fish-type pirates. And this is a complete species that exists from the people of the land and the sea, and he wants Baggy to give him information about who stole the map and ran away from him. So he tells Baggy that the leader of this team is called Luffy with a cap, and he will be able to reach him at night and let him live. And we go to Luffy, who is hungry in the middle of the night, and he finds Zoro, and he also walks in the palace. So they both go to the kitchen to eat. And at the same time, Nami is awake to steal anything, and she carries a bag with her, and she enters the first room she meets. But it is Kaya's room, and she is awake, and she knows that Nami is a thief, but she is not upset with her, and she wants to talk to her and pull each other. And we go to the palace kitchen, and Usopp is sitting there, so they sit together. And we go back to Kaya, who opened her heart to Nami and told her everything about her. And she told her that she is an orphan, and she really cares about Nami, and Nami is very kind. And Zoro wants to drink any drink, so he tells Usopp that he will take the palace's storage, and he decides to stay in the kitchen because he found something to drink. And this is what the cook did, and she put poison in it. And unfortunately, Luffy drinks it all at once. And we go to the palace, and there Usopp falls because he hit something on the ground. But when he looks, he finds Mary's body, and he goes to them, and the speed of his ability, he and his team can overcome Zoro and lose consciousness. And Usopp escapes from fear, and goes to the Klahadore team and throws Zoro Mary in a well away from the palace. And Usopp goes to the people of the city to let them know that there are pirates in the city, but no one believes him. And this is because when he was young, he kept lying a lot, and we know that his father is a pirate. But he went out once and never came back. And after his mother died, he was the only one in the world. But Usopp is sitting and crying, and he says that the pirates have arrived and no one believes him. But he gets a beer. And he finds that the distance to get out is very far, and he describes Usopp to Kobe on the palace of Kaya. And she goes down to sleep in the kitchen, and she finds Luffy thrown on the table, and she looks up, and she knows that he drank something that she did. But she hears someone coming, so she runs to hide in the closet, and she knows that the Klahadore team is a pirate, and also the cook who made the poison. And because of him, Luffy is like this. And it is supposed that Luffy apologizes, but Kobe knocks on the palace door and goes to the Klahadore team to open. And he says that Usopp is a liar, and the whole city knows. And he also brings Luffy to them, because he knows that he is wanted. And he tells them that he drank a lot of leledy, and we go to visit him when he spends in the beer cellar. He thinks about his past, and we know that he was a failure, and there was a girl who always won over him. Her name is Kuina. But once Kuina tries to calm him down, but he tells her that the sword is in the wooden sword, and he challenges her in a real sword fight. And indeed she accepts, but he also loses. But Kuina tells him that she is waiting for him to grow up, and he becomes weak in her size, so that he loses her. And from then on, while they are challenging each other, he decides that in the future, someone must be the greatest fighter in the world, until one day the teacher goes to visit him and tells him the worst news that he can hear, and that Kuina died because of a sharp battle. And from then on, his goal is to be the greatest fighter in the world. And also the third sword that I have is Kuina's sword, and he lost to share it with any victory for him. And because of these memories, he gets all his energy, and he can get out of the beer, and he goes to Usopp and Kaya, and tells her that she has the role of a pirate, and he wants to kill them all. And when Kaya gets angry at him and beats him with pain, and tells him to stop lying and walk, but Usopp tells her that he will not move from his place until he is reassured. But at this time, Klahadore activates the security, and all the doors of the palace are closed, and Nami goes to them and confirms the words of Usopp, and tells Kaya that they must escape. And Usopp knows that sometimes they secretly escape from it. But the voice of Kaya's voice reveals their location, and Klahadore tries to reach them to kill them. And he takes out all the poison in his body, and this is a power of his abilities, and he is good, but he wants to kill Luffy. But Zoro comes to them and beats him, and he goes to Luffy with him to save their friends. But Kubi tells them that he should arrest them, but Luffy tells him that he must save his friends. And the best thing for him is that he does not prevent him. And he actually reaches the palace and can enter it. But Zoro takes over the responsibility of Klahadore's team, and Luffy takes over Klahadore himself. But Klahadore is very fast to the point that Luffy does not see him. But with a little concentration from Luffy, he can determine his location and beat him. And he repeats the same process twice until he can catch him and get close to him. And then Luffy beats Klahadore with the Jum no, but with his brain, not with his grip. And Klahadore flies out of the palace. And Zoro succeeds in his responsibility. And he is supposed to escape because the naval forces will reach him. But Luffy says that they do not have a ship. But Kaya opposes him and tells him that they really have a ship. And Kaya decides to give them a ship that looks like a goat, and Luffy calls it the Mary ship. And this is because Mary, who died, is the one who designed and built it. And Luffy also offers Usopp to join them, but he refuses to stay with Kaya. But Kaya confesses to Usopp her love, and he is also replacing her the same feeling, and asks him to see his life and enjoy it. And she will study medicine and see her life. And thus Luffy is really the leader of the pirates because he has his own ship and his team. But Gar decides to give Luffy a location, and he has his ship, and he decides to attack him, and Luffy chooses with his team the ship that will be lifted on the ship. But they find the bombs being thrown at them, and Luffy appears and stays in the scene. And he knows Gar very well, and this is because he says loudly that this is his grandfather. And of course this news shocks the whole team. And we know that Gar is Luffy's grandfather. And when Luffy told him that he wanted to be a pirate, Gar was annoying him and forcing him to train with him to be a marine soldier. And when Gar sees that this is his grandson, he chooses to talk to him calmly and tells him to surrender himself. But Luffy refuses, and Gar is shocked and shoots a bomb in his hand, not with the cannon. And because of his strength, the bomb is stronger than the cannon. But Luffy blows himself up and returns the bomb to Gar's ship and breaks its legs, and Luffy can escape with his ship. And none of the team understands what happened. But when they visit him, they go to ask Luffy about his relationship with Gar. And Luffy tells him that he does not want to talk, so they let him visit him at his convenience. And they stay in the sea because the fog fills the place. But Luffy smells the smell of food, and Luffy's pipes are never wrong in something like this. And despite the failure of the compass, maps, and all the methods, Luffy with the help of his pipes can deliver his ship to the place of food. And it is a ship in the middle of the sea, and they know that it is a seafood restaurant, so they enter and sit on the table and wait for food. And there is a chef named Sanji who is good at cooking and his arts. But the owner of the ship, whose name is Zeph, throws Sanji's dishes and tells him that he is not a cook and does not understand it. And he invites him as a waiter to the restaurant, and he goes and knows Luffy's requests and his team. But he turns in sleepy eyes and keeps reflecting them, and the whole team keeps laughing at him. And because Luffy was able to escape from Gar, Gar decides to help with a pirate named Mihawk. And Mihawk is one of the 7 princes, and these 7 pirates are from their stronghold. The naval forces have passed a peace treaty with them, and they let them do what they want, but on the condition of the help of the forces at any time. And Gar asks Mihawk to find a guy named Luffy and wear a hat, but he wants to live, not die. And we go to Luffy and his team after they ate a lot. Sanji comes to them with the account, but Luffy writes to him that he will pay later. So Sanji goes and calls Zeph, and he tells Luffy that he will be the king of the pirates and will pay him later. But Zeph forces Luffy to wash the dishes for him at the cost of his food. And at that time, Luffy's team enjoys their time and drinks and dances. But Usopp keeps drinking, and from the drink he keeps talking about his adventures with Luffy. But Mihawk the pirate stands next to him and listens to him, and he asks him about the place of Luffy, and Usopp goes to present him to the team. But Zoro knows Mihawk and tells him that he is honored to meet him. But he challenges him to a duel, and we know that Mihawk is the greatest fighter in the world. And Zoro tells him that he promised a dear person to be the greatest fighter, and this is the only solution. So Mihawk accepts the duel and agrees on the second day at the port, and Luffy finishes his work and goes to the team. And he finds Nami getting angry at Zoro, and he knows that Zoro entered the duel with the greatest fighter in the world. And Nami asks Luffy to convince Zoro to leave the duel. But Zoro does not agree, and Luffy says that this is Zoro's dream, as he says. So he must try to achieve it. And indeed, the second day the team goes to the place of the descent, and he hands over Mihawk to Luffy, and says that he thought he was coming for a criminal, and he did not know that he was a small child. But Zoro cuts Mihawk and asks him to start the descent. But Mihawk is confident and chooses to descend Zoro with a small knife hanging in his neck. And indeed, he is stronger than Zoro in stages, and he can hurt him in a place close to his heart, but he does not kill him. But Mihawk knows that Zoro is a brave person and has determination, so he pulls out his sword and decides to really descend Zoro. But in the first defense of the two sides, Zoro's sword falls broken by Mihawk's strength. So he chooses Zoro to surrender and guard his sword, and asks Mihawk to hurt him and kill him. And indeed, Mihawk gives him a new blow to his chest, and Luffy runs to Zoro, and he is terrified. But Mihawk tells Luffy that he was supposed to catch him now, but he decided not to do that. And Zoro talks to him and tells him that he is still early to his death, and he will give him a blow away from the vital point, and the treatment will be good. And he asks Zoro to train and be good and come back to defeat him, and he will be waiting. But Zoro does not bear the pain and loses consciousness while holding his sword. So Zoro takes the guest's ship and goes to Luffy to ask Sanji for a doctor quickly. So Zoro asks Sanji to pour alcohol on him, a fresh fish, a knife, and a thread. And Zeph goes to Zoro and cuts a fish next to him and separates its skin from its flesh, and he stitches wounds to Zoro and puts a fish skin on it. And this is because it is useful in healing wounds. And he is waiting for Zoro to overcome the loss of consciousness, and the rate of recovery is very weak. And Mihawk goes to Garp and tells him that he found Luffy, but he left him to walk, and he did not accept him because he is a great friend, and he wants to see him make his treasure trip, One Piece. Maybe he will find him and become the king of the pirates and the grandson of General Corson. And Mihawk goes to Garp and enters Garp in a state of anxiety and breaks his entire office. and Luffy is sitting with Usopp and Sanji, and finds that Sanji is taking out all his energy in eating. So he asks him about his origins, and Sanji tells him about his story. And we know that he was a chef's assistant on a very high ship, but one day a pirate ship attacked them, one named Zeph, the owner of the Red Men, and this was the title of Zeph in the past. And this is because his legs were always redder than the blood of his enemies. But Sanji hides with a knife because he was afraid, and Zeph enters the restaurant and sees soup on the stove, and when he tastes it, he finds it very bad, so he adds spices. But Sanji runs away with him and tells him that he is ready to die, and because he sees his food, he puts it on the hands of a pirate like him, and really takes out Zeph's sword and wants to kill Sanji on the spot. But the sea is high waves, and unfortunately the ship they are in breaks and sinks, and Sanji goes up and finds himself sitting next to Zeph on a mountain in the middle of the water, and he knows that his ship and the pirate ship are also sunken, and they are the only two who survived, and he says that he must wait for any ship to save them. So Zeph throws a bag of food to Sanji and tells him that this is his share of food, and Zeph's bag is bigger than him, and Zeph says that because he is older than him in body and age, he must eat more, and asks Zeph from Sanji to go to the other side of the mountain because he does not want to see him, and sends Sanji away from Zeph and waits for him again and again until they reach that they wait 70 days on the mountain. And the food with Sanji is finished, and he decides to go to Zeph and kill him and take his food from him. But when he goes to Zeph, he is surprised that the bag of food with him contains gold and jewels. And we know that Zeph left all the food with Sanji, and Zeph had to cut his leg and eat it to save food for Sanji, and a ship comes and they are saved. And from then on, Sanji does not leave Zeph because he knows that although he is a pirate and a wanderer, but he is good, and his mind is white, and he knows that Sanji is in the place of Luffy, and he goes to Zeph's ship and asks Zeph himself, and he tells him that he will wait for the best meal for him. And during his meal, if he does not find Luffy, who is hiding with them, he will kill everyone on the ship. And Nami hears everything, and she goes to Luffy and tells him to escape by the map, and she tells him that Sanji will kill him. And Luffy does not know who he is, but he chooses to kill him. And indeed, Arnold was going to start with the first victim on the ship, but he focuses on Luffy, and we know that Arnold knew where Luffy was from Baggy, and his eyes were literally on Luffy's hat, and he was watching them all the time, and Zeph tries to hit Arnold with bullets, but Arnold's body is paralyzed, so he hits one of Arnold's enemies, Zeph, and what happened to him makes Sanji go crazy, and he goes to them all to hit, but he is weak, so he throws like Zeph, and Luffy directs his blows to Arnold, but Arnold is like playing with his little child, and he throws Luffy out of the ship, and he tries as much as he can to hit Arnold. But in the end, Arnold wins, and he wants to pass Luffy and kill him. But Nami stops him and tells him that they have completed their mission, and there is no need to kill anyone. And Luffy knows that Nami is an ally of Arnold's, and she was deceiving them to reach the map. And when she got what she wanted, she left and let Arnold throw Luffy in the sea. And this really happens, and Luffy was going to drown, but Sanji jumps and saves him, and Sanji returns to the ship, and he finds Zeph's restaurant broken, and he asks Zeph to leave everything alone, and does not interfere in other things, and does not want Sanji to be a city for him all his life. And Luffy returns to visit him and tells him what happened, and he knows that Nami deceived him, and now he needs him and does not want to die. And he returns to visit him and tells him that his words are close to affecting him. And if he was a girl, he would cry, and Luffy throws him to visit him, and he flies with joy. But he talks seriously to him and tells him that they must know Nami really deceived them, and he promises Luffy that he will stay with him until he finds the One Piece treasure, or even until he dies. But until these moments, he will stay with him and help him first, because from now on he considers him his captain. And this is their time to go to Nami, and while preparing for the ship, Sanji comes to them and asks them if they need to cook with them. And Luffy agrees without hesitation, and this is a new member of the team, and they break the chains and move. But Sanji sees Zeph standing and saying goodbye, and Sanji tells him that he spent all his life with him, and he will always be indebted to him, and he calls the old man, and he ends his words by saying that he will never be forgotten, and he is full of tears, and while he is in the middle of the sea, he wants to know how Nami will arrive. And he tells them that Luffy has everything ready, and he will be able to take the head of Buggy from the team of Arnold, and because Buggy's body is in Arnold's city, Nami will be there. And indeed, Nami will be in Arnold's city. And there she will be the only human among the Asmic species. And we know that Nami is an orphan, and there was one of the naval forces that she and her daughter Nojiko could find, and she decided to adopt them and consider them her daughters. But Arnold cuts off Nami's thought and tells her that her next mission is in Coco's city to collect taxes. And we know that Coco's city is the original city of Nami, and she does not want to go because her family no longer loves her. And Luffy and his team arrive in Coco's city because it is a city near Arnold's city, and they find people there who are gathered and collect money from each other. and Nami enters them to take the money. And everyone in the place, even her sister, hates her. Because 10 years ago, Arnold attacked them. And Nami's mother's neighbor hid her and Nojiko. But Arnold enters them and asks her mother for a 100,000 gold coin tax on one person. And she says that she lives alone. And Arnold gives her a watch that is worth 100,000. But he notices that there are 2 extra layers on the food table, and he knows that she is lying, and he was going to kill her because the girls were coming out of their hideout. And he tells them that Arnold will take 50,000 on the only child. But Nami's mother is not with her again. So Arnold decides to kill her in return for her daughter's living, and Nami's mother agrees. And this is what happens in front of the eyes of the girls. So Nami decides to go to Arnold and show him that she joins his team. And this is because she is an expert in maps and salt. And since then they have considered her a traitor, so Luffy and his team go to Nojiko. And they want to know what Nami did to be so spoiled. So he shows Sangi that he will cook for Nojiko the best food in return for this information. And she agrees, and tells them the whole story of Nami, and tells them that she chose to stay with Arnold so that she would not be afraid like them. But Luffy feels that something is missing, and he goes to a group of the treacherous naval forces to get taxes from Arnold. And this is in return for them to cover up for him. And after they leave, Nami goes to Arnold and tells him that she has collected 100 million and is waiting for him to end their agreement. So she tells him to go get the money, and he waits for her. And when Nami leaves, Arnold sends the naval forces behind her to steal it, and Nami hides the money in her mother's grave. But Nojiko sees her and wants to kill her, and she also knows that she has carried money in the grave, and she says that she does not respect their mother. But Nami asks Nojiko to hear her, and she knows that she went to Arnold to agree with him to leave Cocoa City and leave, and she will serve him. And when he has collected 100 million gold coins, he will tell her and the people of the village. So Nojiko knows that all the time she hated her sister because he thought she was a traitor, but she was protecting them and sacrificing herself. But the naval forces come to them and take Nojiko's money forcibly from her, and she keeps screaming and Nojiko tries to stop her. But Nami runs after them and she knows that Arnold did this, and she tries to cut her arm's skin because he had Arnold's tattoo on it, but he grabs her arm and tells her to stop. So she screams at Nami and tells him that she wants his help because she is oppressed. And he tells her that he will definitely help her. And he puts on his hat. And anger is a terrifying symbol on the face of Luffy. And Luffy goes with his team to the city of Arnold. And in the morning he goes up to them and sits with Arnold's team more than them in stages. But Luffy tells them to follow Arnold's men. And he and Nami will take care of Arnold himself. And he asks Luffy from Nami to look for the One Piece map. And she really finds it. But Arnold enters them. And he has a huge sword and puts it on Luffy's neck. And he tells him that Nami is his. But Luffy holds Arnold's sword, and with his pressure he breaks the wall, and he tells him that Nami is not a tool to be his. But she is a human and also from his team, and this has another account, and he tells Luffy Nami to go and he will take care of Arnold. But all Luffy's attempts to hit Arnold fail because he becomes immune, and he can even cut her teeth and pull it out again. But Luffy gets an idea that he will not hit Arnold. But he will lose everything he has, thanks to Nami. And he points Luffy's sword to the maps that are hanging on the wall, and also the building they are in. And when the building is about to fall on their heads, they direct Luffy to hit Arnold with a rubber bullet, and this hits Luffy more than 50 times at a new speed, and he can fly away from Arnold. And he ends this fight with a blow called a war break, and he raises his leg to the sky and extends it, and he goes down on Arnold's head and destroys the building, and the whole building falls on Luffy and Arnold. But Luffy is still alive, and he goes out, and there is no one. But the dirt is covered with his face. And he tells the voices of Nami's family that she is their friend, and they are her team and her new family. And they all laugh, and peace returns to the city of Cocoa, and they all forgive Nami after they know the truth. And he reaches the west of Cocoa City and wants to catch Luffy, but Kobe refuses and disobeys the orders of the West. And also he can distinguish between good and evil, and they enter into a fight with each other. And the West is 1,000,000 times stronger than Luffy. This is almost impossible to have a chance for Luffy. But Luffy does not give up and keeps trying until Garp takes off his clothes and tells him to give up. But Luffy tells him that he will not give up and will remain a pirate and will also be the king of the pirates. And he gets a crazy laugh from him. And at this moment, Garp thinks of the Golden Roger. So he leaves Luffy and keeps laughing hysterically. And he orders his soldiers to withdraw and leave Luffy. And Garp tells Luffy that he was testing him and wanted to know if he would give up or not. And he tells him that he was beating him very hard, and he could not at least make it easier for him. So he tells him, Garp, and where is the fun? And he goes to be nice to Luffy and tells him that from this moment he will be alone, and he leaves him and goes. But Luffy tells him that he has his team. And the next day, Kobe goes to Luffy to say goodbye for the last time, and he brings him a gift, which is Luffy's official announcement that he is in need of justice, as he always dreamed, and Luffy flies from joy and hugs Kobe, and Kobe has to leave him to go back to Garp. And he goes to his team and tells them that he is in need of justice, and he gets a reward of 30 million gold coins, and this is the largest number ever written on the pirate's announcement. And of course, all Luffy's friends, when they see this announcement, are proud of him and know that he will really be the king of the pirates. Even his enemies know that the coming days will be full of confrontation with Luffy, and Garp decides to take over Kobe's training and blame him so that he can beat Luffy in the future. And Mihawk goes to Shanks, and we know that they are friends, and he is coming to show him Luffy's announcement. And of course, Shanks and his team do not believe themselves and fly from joy and are proud of Luffy, and they decide to celebrate. And Mihawk agrees to celebrate with them, but he is conservative on his sharp facial features. But on the inside, he is proud of Luffy. And finally, Luffy's team is ready for a gift, which is the hat of the Crow, and they make it bigger and raise it on the ship's wings. And so they are called the Pirates of the Crow's Hat, and he is their leader. And they all gather on a barrel to make a sailing ceremony, and they all put their feet on the barrel. And everyone remembers his painful memories and his dream that he wants to have, so that they have a reason to stay together. But away from all these happy and proud moments, Luffy's fame has a bad side, and that is because he has won enemies who have never dealt with him, but they are jealous of him. And so our series ends,